D&D has redefined modern fantasy tropes and everything in between, but what I want to do today is amuse the fantastic question of what if Genshin Impact characters played Dungeons & Dragons, the tabletop RPG. So I'll cover how are they potentially as a player and what classes they'll play in D&D. Let's go Mondstadt style. Albedo. Albedo is the kind of guy that draws all the minis, the character arts, the journals, and the maps for the party. If he's part of the campaign, rest assured everyone else's characters just have really pretty art and all the figurines on the tables are really high quality renditions. Oh, and he's a really good dungeon master when it comes to rulings, but I can see him being super flexible with the rules just because he thinks it's interesting. As for the class, Transmutation Wizard or Alchemist Artificer, there's no way that Albedo's class in the game isn't intelligence-based. I like to think he's the kind of player that has the weirdest of spells on his list like Skywrite or Fabricate or Summon Celestial that not everyone uses, but he's just happy to experiment with. Amber. Amber is a really simple player. She's just happy to roll initiative and bonk. She doesn't have the best of rule awareness, but she's just happy to roleplay. She's always the one with the highest passive perception, the scout of the party that always checks for traps and other things, probably takes Observant as a feature for the passive perception investigation. As for the class, Scout Rogue and Hunter Ranger, definitely something with expertise in perception and investigation, and most definitely someone that uses a bow and is a sharpshooter. Barbara. She's the cleric that always deals 60 damage per turn and nobody can question them. Designated healer and support of the team, but a designated healer in a way that she does more damage than actually healing the party. I can see Barbara being quiet when role-playing, but she's there when she needs to be to support her team. As for her class, Grave Cleric or Life Cleric for healing or honestly, maybe even a bard. I can definitely see Barbara boosting her team with musical-based spells or absolutely killing everyone else with a well-placed hypnotic pattern. Bennett. I'm sorry, but this man breeds critical failures. Dodge a fireball? Whoops, your leg gets caught in something and you take 68 points of damage. Oh, you want to hit something? Whoops, critical failure. You accidentally drop your sword into a ditch and now you don't have a weapon. Whoa. You accidentally step on a random pit trap and now you're plummeting 60 feet into a dark ditch. As for his class, Wild Magic Sorcerer, or a Cleric Martial hybrid that does a lot of fire damage. He blesses the party by boosting their stats, he buffs his allies, and he can cast cool fire spells. I'm really leaning a lot towards Light Cleric if you want a pure build for Bennett. Diluc. This is the guy that didn't even want to play Dungeons & Dragons, but Kaya and the other people just showed up in his house one day with a board, the screen, the maps, and the minis and just declared that Diluc's house was now the mysterious domain of Naberius, and everyone just took a seat and Diluc just could not complain. It begins with Diluc begrudgingly agreeing to have them in his house, then he realizes he's a little interested in the game and now here he is, with the production value of Critical Role and all the custom miniatures, maps, lighting, sound effects, and even cosplay. As for his class, a Great Weapon Master, Flame Tongue Great Sword wielding Battle Master fighter that has 4 attacks. In level 11, of course. Diona. Diona wouldn't even really be playing Dungeons & Dragons seriously and just messes around with the campaign in her sheet. She's not a completely min-max player that looks for stats, she's kind of just there to enjoy the world around her. I can definitely see her playing with Klee, so their campaigns are much less grittier than the adult versions of Dungeons & Dragons. As for the class, definitely a Tabaxi Ranger that went Hunter. Diona is also like Amber who utilizes her speed and perception to get past traps when in dungeons and stuff, so I can definitely see that being a case. Hunter Ranger it is. Eula. Eula feels like the kind of player that gets really deep in her roleplay. Kind of like Fischl levels, but in a weird paladin-like, morally upright, I will smite you all with my blade if you test me vibe. Whether it's intentional or not is absolutely unknown, but I can see her being really into the long monologue-y type of characters that are fighting for obscure bouts of justice in society, only to accidentally piss off literally everyone in the tavern and initiate combat. Eula as a dungeon master would be pretty cool though. I actually have a dungeon master in real life that really gives me Eula vibes because she always just asks, "Are you sure about that?" And everyone is just too afraid to say no. Passive intimidation is scary. As for the class, Eula definitely plays a Vengeance Paladin. There is no way you can look at me in the eye and tell me that she doesn't play a subclass called Vengeance of a class that can deal massive tons of Jesus damage on a hit. Fischl. Absolutely just a role player. Absolutely min-maxes all of her stats to be as role-play as possible. She is the kind of player that when you ask for her backstory, she comes to the session with several binders worth of information and everyone has to sort through what the hell they are looking at. As for the class, definitely a Shadow Sorcerer with Pack of the Chain Warlock levels. This combination is so strong if you want a familiar and want to cast spells. Plus, it's charisma based, so Official can keep talking all she wants in and out of character. Jean. Kind of plays vanilla, doesn't really multiclass at all actually. She's the kind of player that is very punctual if the Dungeon Master asks her to give any backstory or character sheets that they need, and she's a really good healer in the party. As for her class, if you've ever seen a Sorcerer-Paladin combination, this is Jean. A Divine Soul Sorcerer Watcher's Paladin with aura who uses the power of God and anime on her side to smite her foes. Kaya. This is the kind of guy that just always has something planned. You're not even sure if the Dungeon Master knows about this guy's plans, but you can be certain that this guy is planning the whole campaign behind everyone's backs. Even as a player. He is helpful on your team and shares what he knows, but if you've ever played D&D, you're just kind of curious about his backstory. Class? Definitely a rogue with a frostbrand rapier. I can also see him playing a dual-wielder blade singer wizard in all honesty. That would be pretty cool. Klee. Doesn't really know much about the rules or the campaign itself, but she's just happy to do random things on the module. It would be an absolute nightmare to try and railroad the conversation when she's on your party, and you can bet Klee always asks for the NPC names and the DM just has no idea how to respond to her. As for her class, Blaster Caster. Definitely either an Evocation Wizard that casts Fireball a lot, or a Draconic Sorcerer that casts Fireball a lot. Lisa. Definitely very well read with the rules, but doesn't rules lawyer either out of respect or just out of laziness. Lisa's a chill player, but I can definitely see her not really giving much input and just letting others roll for their stuff. As for the class, I can see her playing an enchantment or an illusion wizard. Something powerful, but also something very, very low-key. Mona. I definitely feel like she has fought a Dungeon Master at least once when it comes to the rules, but is actually a pretty good mechanical player. She's a tactician and always has the proper support spell for any situation. You need a teleport so that the melees can get to the front faster? Mona has Dimension Door. The enemy is invisible? Oh, her sea invisibility is up. You need a quick area of effect spell to kill everyone? A Cone of Cold is probably enough. Mona's spellbook in D&D would definitely be the most filled up. And as for her class, given that she's a support, Divination Wizard. Hands down. Which is a really weird shame because divination wizards are so weak and don't really do as much divining as the other schools of wizards. But hey, Portent is a guaranteed roll, and a guaranteed roll is a guaranteed roll. Noelle. Definitely the one friend that brings all the snacks. Noelle's always early to help set up the map and the table. Honestly, if Noelle ever played D&D, I would absolutely love to have her on my table. As for her class, definitely Paladin. Either a Watcher's Paladin so that she keeps her allies safe, or an Ancient's Paladin that's main purpose is to combat large damaging spells. On a side note though, she definitely wields a claymore. Rosaria. She's the kind of player that you sometimes see on her phone while you're playing, but when the shit hits the fan, she becomes the brains of the party and makes sure everyone doesn't get themselves killed. Never a Dungeon Master though. You will never pay Rosaria enough to be a Dungeon Master for anyone. Too much work. Class. Mastermind Rogue or Inquisitive Rogue. Someone that works in the shadows but also is able to support the party despite not being direct about it. Though she does use a pole arm, so if you want to go with something like that, I can definitely see her being a great weapon master polearm paladin as well, given that Rosaria is a nun. Razor. Rules hurt Razor's brain, but Razor does his best to understand them. Dungeons & Dragons is a very articulated game with a lot of big words from the person behind the screen, so Razor does his best. Class. Definitely Wolf Totem Barbarian Great Weapon Master that just bonks and bonks and bonks. Sucrose. Sucrose is the player that always has the rulebooks next to her, and she's a massive lore nerd. Honestly, if there was anyone in Genshin that would power game and theory craft in an RPG, it would definitely be Sucrose and Albedo. Sucrose is a player that has so much knowledge about multiclassing and what's the most optimal builds, but she doesn't always get to use it if it's homebrew. As for the class, well, I like to think that she's a wizard or an artificer like Albedo, but I can also see her being a sorcerer, someone that just dishes out so much damage per turn. Maybe like a storm sorcerer given she's animal? Venti. Venti is the kind of player that always has something up his sleeve and always somehow knows more than anyone else on the table. Kind of like Kaya but less suspicious given how he's really low-key about it. Though he absolutely has sick tunes. and might be shit-faced drunk during special runs. As for his class, definitely Eloquence or Lore Bard. Bard colleges known for their silver tongue and their capability of high deception or just knowing a lot more than the people around them. Bards specialize in boosting and decreasing other people's rolls, so I can definitely see Venti, being the little shit that he is, use his bardic features to mess with both the dungeon master and the players. But yes, that's it for me today. I'm actually planning to run a homebrew that's Genshin setting, but I'm not really sure what kind of system it's going to adopt and if I even am able to run a homebrew like that. But regardless, this is just for fun, and if you want to see more of this kind of content like for Leo and Inazuma, I have some ideas, especially for Scaramouche if he plays D&D. But regardless, my name is Aster and thank you for chilling with me. You see the bartender look at you up and down and smile at you. It's been a while since we've had adventures. Quite a while, honestly. The last one came back with no head. Still alive, though. Magic and everything. It is honestly quite exhausting how you think that we care about you. But I suppose, Dungeon Master, I take a few hits. If you honestly truly think that I will not eat that mysterious poisonous ivy, you are horribly mistaken.
Mister, do you want to see my fireball?
I will do my best to make sure that all of you live, for in the name of Tyr, I will assure that you will all see the light of day.
I'm exhausted. Could we please get to the next map?
You Ardavian-looking assholes think that you know so much about us, just because you're noblemans and all.
Food? Yeah, I see a lot of food. Saw a dragon. Took out its tail and decided that, you know what? We need a new menu.
Private Furfur, make sure that none of you die and make sure that all of you come back here alive.
Yeah, I'm kind of a bard myself. Honestly, it's just kind of exhausting getting all the attention and praise from everyone.
We
Ah, fuck.
are citri.
Listen here, maggot.